Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon to some. Um, just wanted to let you know that we'll be getting started momentarily while we wait for a few others to arrive. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar on getting started with TracerPlus. I'm your presenter, Joe Kraebel. I'm a mobile solutions architect here at PTS. And what we're going to do first is talk a little bit about portable technology solutions, or what we refer to as PTS. So we've been providing rapid application data collection solutions requiring no programming since 2000. We are the leaders in IoT deployments with our TracerPlus, that's our mobile component, and our ClearStream, which is our fixed RFID BLE software component. So we've been doing that for years. We've also are developers of the PTS Cloud, which is a effective way of managing your data in the cloud and simplifying the syncing of data between devices, readers, and cloud. What we're going to talk about today is TracerPlus. So that is our application configuration software for mobile data collection, as well as the mobile client, and the Connect tool for connecting your data to most databases and Excel sheets. So we do support devices running Android, iOS, and Windows. With our Connect software, we also offer connecting options to Microsoft Access, SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, any type of ERP systems, cloud systems, Microsoft Excel, as well as text files. So the getting started main components. So as I mentioned first, we have our TracerPlus desktop. This is our application design tool. It's very flexible, where you can design powerful forms, developing your own data collection applications. We also offer services for us to create those applications for you if needed. We have our TracerPlus Connect software, which handles the syncing of data between the client and the destination of your choice. So this supports syncing both to and from, as well as real-time connections. And the last component is the TracerPlus client. That's going to be the software that runs on your device. So that could be, a barcode-enabled device, RFID-enabled device, an Android phone, iOS device, whether it be a phone or an iPad, as well as Windows PCs and tablets. Once you do install TracerPlus to a device, you are presented with some free sample applications. I'll actually be demonstrating these in our live demonstration, showing you how these connect to the PTS cloud. And you can also access our free library of apps at our TracerPlus website at tracerplus.com/mobile-app. And to actually get TracerPlus, you can get that from the Google Play Store or the app, the iOS App Store. So we do also offer some services as well when creating TracerPlus applications. If you do happen to enlist our services, we do offer the creation of development agreements. So that's something we can both sign off on, and kind of outlines the work that will be performed. We also provide written scopes of work, or what we call SOWs. So that will be an outline of what the application will do, detailing the flow and any notes on the app that would also be signed off on. We also offer application training, where you can have a one-on-one session with one of our engineers in using the TracerPlus software. We also provide application testing as well, and database services such as our PTS cloud. All right, now to the good stuff. So in the live demonstration today, I just wanted to give you an overview of what we're going to be showing. One, how to get the TracerPlus software. Two, using the provided demo apps with our PTS cloud. Also, how to use apps from the TracerPlus app library, as well as modifying one of those apps to sync with Excel. And then lastly, I'm going to create a quick RFID tag reading app from scratch. I just do want to mention, I'm just going to put this slide up here. If you do have any questions at any point throughout the webinar, please feel free to type them into the question panel, and we will address those at the conclusion of the demonstration. All right, so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start with the live demo, first showing you how to get the TracerPlus software. So once you download TracerPlus either to your Android or iOS device, or even Windows, you'll have the option to log in. And at that point, if you don't have an account, you can create or sign up for an account. At that point, you'll get an email with a link to actually creating a user that will bring you to the page that I'm showing right now. So this is our subscriptions.tracerplus.com. And this is going to be your dashboard for any users, whether you've purchased or even if you're doing a TracerPlus trial. So you'll see it's showing my active logins. I have 2 devices logged into this account. It shows my login history as well as any user login detail, along with my number of licenses and some support resources down below. So in order to get the software, we can just simply go over to the left bar here, click on software downloads, and we have options to download the version that we are currently using. We would always recommend downloading the latest release version, which happens to be 10.8.0 at this point. And you have the option to download the desktop tools, So that's going to be an all-in-one installer that's going to include desktop and Connect, as well as our PC client, or TracerPlus for PC, we call it. Or you can download individually by downloading or clicking on this TracerPlus desktop download or TracerPlus Connect. And in the event that you're not able to download TracerPlus from the Play Store, maybe your organization has restrictions on what can be accessed on the device itself, you can actually download that APK file from here and then copy over to the device for manual install. So that's how you're able to get the TracerPlus software. Once it's installed to a mobile device, I'm going to pull up my device here. So this is a handheld RFID device and I'm remote controlling with a tool called Visor. It's very useful, especially if you're looking to take screenshots or create user manuals. So you'll see we have an icon here for TracerPlus. So once you download and install TracerPlus to a device, you'll be presented with that login screen that I mentioned. I have it already logging in. And what you'll see is our sample applications. So these are apps free to use that are provided right out of the box with a default TracerPlus install. And these communicate with our PTS cloud, demonstrating how you can utilize that feature for your data collection. So to actually view this data, you would go to apps.cloud.ptshome.com. So I have that site open here and you'll be greeted with this welcome screen. Has a little overview video of how to use this dashboard and how to use the actual demo apps. The demo dashboard just kind of gives you an overview of what your dashboard could look like if you do happen to sign up for a PTS cloud. And if we jump over to our demo apps library, you'll see that these apps here match what we have on our device. If I bring our device back up, you'll see that we have applications on the device matching each of these demo apps on the cloud. So I'll just show you a few of these. For example, if we go to the extinguisher inspection, I can scan an extinguisher ID, so that could be a barcode on your fire extinguishers. It's going to say record not found. Would you like to create a new one? I'll click yes. I can enter the location that that extinguisher is in. So we'll say that it's in room 117. Let's enter its pressure. We'll just say 35, and we'll just say that it's a large extinguisher. From here, I can actually take a photo. So I'm just going to take a photo of something on my desk here. Click the check mark. And you'll see the photo of that item being displayed on the screen. I can click Save Inspection. And if I wanted to, I could perform additional inspections. Otherwise, if I go to the extinguisher inspection, click Demo this app, you'll see a cloud view of the actual data and also a little bit of an explanation of what this form does. So if I go back to the device, I'm going to click Sync. That's going to send this data over to this sample cloud. If I click Refresh, there's the data I just collected. Here's my username, who was inspected by, the extinguisher ID, the location it was in, the pressure, the description, and I can even view the photo by just clicking this photo icon, and it'll bring up our image. If you have a lot of data, you can also click this expand icon here. That'll show the data grid in a full screen. I can click it again to shrink it. You can also export this data. This will export to a CSV file. You can also delete. If you wanted to clear out the record, you could delete that by checking it and clicking delete. And you can also use the search bar to actually search for specific data if you have multiple records saved in this table. So the other sample I just wanted to show quick was the RFID. So simple RFID. This is a nice app to test out RFID functionality on your device as well as in your environment. So let me pull that up on my handheld. So that would be the Scan RFID Tags app. If you're opening the app for the first time, you'll be greeted with this screen here to choose the type of RFID device you're using. In this case, I happen to be using a JANA, but we also support Zebra, TSL, Cypher, and Honeywell. So in this app, I can just select a location and then just scan a bunch of tags. By just holding in the trigger, you'll see that I scanned 107 tags in a matter of seconds. And to further show off the RFID functionality in TracerPlus, we give you an option to test out the Geiger. So if I click locate, and then I can kind of browse through this list of tags and pick a tag I want to look for, and then click locate. This will pop up our tag locator dialog. And then if I press and hold the trigger, I don't know if you kind of hear that beeping. As I get further away from the item, it beeps less. But then as I start getting closer to the item, it'll beep more frequently. And then you also see that progress bar go up fully once I'm right on top of that item. All right, so now let's say we just want to sync that data. So I'll click sync. It's going to send these 107 records over to the PTS cloud. If I come over here, click refresh, there's our 107 records. Here's who scanned them, the RFID tags I read, and the location they were read in, as well as the date scanned. So we do offer other samples for inventory management. This is where you can scan an item, enter its name, location, and quantity. We have a delivery tracking sample that will utilize a device's built-in GPS if it supports it, where you can enter a recipient for delivery, where it was left, capture their signature, as well as scan any tracking numbers. We also have an asset management where you can scan an asset tag, a serial number, and select the type of equipment it is, sending this back to the cloud. You can actually maintain these on the device. So you can actually make updates to assets, which will then update in the cloud. And then we have a similar app to just test barcode scanning as we did for RFID tags. So in this one, you can just simply scan a bunch of barcodes just to test out your barcode scanner to make sure it's working with TracerPlus, and I can sync this data to the sample cloud. If I go to demo apps, simple scan, there's my 7 barcodes. So as I mentioned, this is all free to use. Once you install TracerPlus, by default, you'll have access to these applications as well as this apps.cloud. And you'll also notice that the apps.cloud does have a link to manage your mobile subscription. So if I click that, I can go back to that subscriptions portal that I was showing initially, where I can view my devices, logged in users, as well as manage my subscription users. All right, so next up, I want to show the TracerPlus sample apps. So I'm going to go to TracerPlus.com. And I also want to note that we did recently launch a new website for TracerPlus.com. So this is live now. And to get to the sample apps, it's a little different from our old site. We now list it under industries. So like, for example, I could go to chemical tracking, and we'll show some different applications if we go to starter apps. But in order to actually access the app library, to see all available apps, just go to the footer, go to pre-built mobile apps, and you'll see those similar categories that we had previously for mobile inspections, field service, retail, route accounting, that's your delivery type apps. inventory management, asset tracking, event tracking, and then any miscellaneous apps that don't fall into those categories. So if I were to go into the inventory management, the app I'm going to try out today is going to be the RFID chemical inventory. So that's this app here. If I click details, it's going to show you all the screenshots of the actual app, as well as a brief description of what the app does. And we even have a video showing what that app does. Now you can download this app and then import it to desktop, but easier would be just go right to TracerPlus desktop. Go to the open, or actually we go to the samples. You'll see that same list of categories. I'm going to click inventory management. There's our RFID chemical inventory. We'll click details. So that's going to show a similar view as to what we saw on the website. So I can flip through the different images to show the different screens of the devices. I can view my app details of what the app is going to do. But to actually get this into desktop, I simply just click next, and then I'll click import. Once imported, we'll click finish, click yes. And here's our RFID chemical tracking app within desktop. You'll see that we have 4 sessions. So a session we would consider a form with a data table behind it. So we have chemical inventory. This is what's going to be used to scan the chemicals to a location. So if I jump over to the form designer, this is what the actual app is going to look like. And we'll go over this when I actually start creating an app from scratch. We also have a Find Chemicals app, which can be used similar to what I showed in the RFID sample for actually locating tags. We have a missing tag data session. So you'll notice that this one is grayed out, meaning that it's going to be hidden from the user once deployed. This is just going to hold a list of chemicals to use for the Find Chemicals. So essentially, you're going to load a list of chemicals you're looking for to that missing tag data. And then this Find Chemicals would then use that list to find any of those chemicals that are missing. Lastly, we have a sync data form. Currently, this is not pointing to anything. There's a little note here that you would need to use our TracerPlus Connect software to set up a connection to your database that you'd want to use with this application. So like I said, in my case, I am going to just use a quick Excel sheet, and I'm just going to show a sync from chemical inventory. So if we look at the list of fields, we have a building, we have a room, we have the RFID tag, we have the date, and we have a user. So what I'm going to do is create a new Excel sheet. I'm going to call it, we'll just call it chemical inventory. Just minimize, that's right here. I'm going to open that up. So then for the sheet name, we'll call it audit. So then we're going to add our fields here. So if we look back at that desktop project, we had building, room, tag ID, add building, room, tag ID, date, user. And note that these don't have to be in any particular order. I'm just doing it this way for ease of mapping. So I'm just gonna put a border around these, bold them, and just set a background color. Okay, so we'll save that sheet. Now what we need to do is open our TracerPlus Connect software. So this, as I explained before, this is our tool used for sending data to and from your handheld device or device, tablet, phone, whatever device you happen to choose. So I'm going to start with a new project. So I'm going to click the new button, and I'm going to add a new profile. So once we add a new profile, we have a choice of a sync profile or a live profile. Sync profile meaning more of a batch type sync of data that's triggered on a button click, and that would be kind of an on-demand type thing whenever you're ready to sync. That would still sync over Wi-Fi or WAN, or in the event you're not able to use either of those, you can also use Ethernet. The live profile gives you a real-time option to actually post data directly to the database of choice as you're saving data. Note that this wouldn't be recommended for masked RFID tag scans or for Excel, just based on slowness and the fact that Excel gets locked once one person opens it. So if someone happens to be in it, you're not going to be able to sync to it or post to it. So in that case, I'm going to do a sync profile, and I can actually link my desktop project to it. So if we jump back over to desktop, we'll just note that project name, RFID chemical tracking. I'm going to click the folder to open the project. So just jump down to RFID chemical tracking. Here's our project. We'll select it, and then we'll click Create Profile. Now I can name this profile. I'll call it Sync from Device. And now I can add a process or a number of processes to this profile. So I'll add a process. We'll call it Sync Audit Scans. And the first thing I'll do is select where am I getting the data from. In this case, since I'm going to be syncing from my handheld, I'm going to select a source of TracerPlus. And then since I associated my desktop project with this, you'll see our list of sessions match the sessions that we had in our project. So we had our chemical inventory, fine chemicals, and our missing tag data. So here we can choose which form we want to send the data from. This is going to be our chemical inventory. Next, we'll choose our destination or where we want to send this data to. So in this case, we created that Excel workbook, so I'm going to choose Excel. I'm going to select that workbook. So I'm going to go to the desktop. We call that chemical inventory. I'll select that. Once we select that workbook, we'll see the list of sheets that are in that workbook. In this case, I just had the one audit sheet. And you'll notice that once I select both of these, you'll see a list of mappings appear at the bottom. So this is where you can map where you want your source data to go to the destination. So in this case, I'm saying that building on the handheld is going to go to column A in the Excel sheet, which happens to be building. So that's why I created the sheet in this order, because it lines up with the order of the fields in our project. Like I said, that's not necessary, as I can select any column I wanted for any of these fields, but it just makes it easier for the mapping part. One other option we can choose for destination is how we want to post this data to the sheet. So by default, we're going to set it to append, which means that every time you sync, it's going to keep adding to that data. We also support overwriting, so meaning each time you sync, it'll overwrite what's currently in the sheet. And you can even add a filter to that, meaning that you only want to overwrite based on some field having a value. We offer update existing. So this can be confusing for some. The update based on is going to be the field that you want to update the data based on, not the fields you want to update. So in this case, we may want to update based on our RFID tag ID, which would be column C, meaning that if we sync data and tags already exist in that sheet, it'll update all the other columns based on that RFID tag existing. If the RFID tag doesn't exist, it'll just ignore it. That's where the update existing append if not found comes in, that it'll update if it exists, or it'll add it if it does not. So that's a very commonly used post type. And then the last one is delete existing. That's kind of used in rare cases where you may want to delete something based on something scanned. So we're just going to leave it at append for now. And then one other option we can choose for destination is under advanced. Since we chose Excel as our destination, we can set our start row in the sheet. So since we have row 1 as our column headers, we'd want to start this off at row 2. On the source side, we also have an option to delete data after transfer. So if I click this, note that this won't work in trial mode or if something's not registered. So this simply means that once I have a successful sync of data to Excel, I'm going to remove that data from my handheld so that I don't keep syncing the same data over and over. We do also offer source filtering so that you can only sync data that matches certain criteria. All right, so now that we have that mapped out, we're going to click the save button to save the project. We'll just call it chemical sync. And then if I jump over to the synchronize page, this is just kind of a view of the sync activity. So I'll show you this. Once I do sync, you'll see some activity pop up here in the bottom section, and then that'll also update the last sync at the top. So I'm just going to jump back to configure for now because I have one other thing I have to do on the desktop side. So right now, if we go to sync data, we have a from database. That's if I want to do a sync from the database to the handheld. To database, meaning I want to sync data from the handheld to the database. The database in this case happens to be an Excel workbook. So I want to configure this button accordingly. So you'll see that this has a button action of do sync. And we have two properties that we need to set for this. We have a sync host ID and then a sync profile ID. The sync host ID is going to define where Connect is running, essentially. So in order to set that, we need to go back to the project tab, go to our Connect section in desktop, and then I'm going to simply enter my IP address or host name here of the PC running Connect. So this can be a PC, it can be a laptop, it can be a server. In most cases, you can use an IP address if it's static. Otherwise, we would recommend using a host name or clicking this scan QR code option that would give you an option to scan a QR code within Connect in order to make that connection. But in this case, I know my IP, it's static. I'm going to pop it in. And you'll note that the host ID or the ID is 1. So if we jump back over to that sync data form, we go to our to database button, we'll see that sync host ID is set to 1 already. So we're good there. The sync profile is going to come from TracerPlus Connect. So if I jump over to Connect, you'll notice the profile ID is 1. So we're going to need to change this from 2 to 1. So now that means once I click this button, it's going to sync with that PC I defined as my host, and then sync any processes within this profile. So you'll see that you're able to use different do sync buttons to control different syncs. So if I wanted to sync data to a device, I can add a separate profile rather than adding another process to this existing profile. I can add that separate profile, add a process to that, and manage those two syncs individually, because in most cases, you don't want to run those at the same time. All right, so now that we have that defined, the next thing we need to do is deploy this to our handheld. And to do that, we click Build Deploy. We're going to click Deploy. That's going to pop up a QR code for me to scan with my device. So if I jump over to the device, I'm going to click the menu in the upper left corner. I'm going to choose Download Project. And then using the device's built-in scanner, I'm just going to scan that QR code. You can also use a camera if your device doesn't have a scanner. All right, so once that's deployed, I'm going to close out the deploy dialog. Let's jump back over to Connect. We'll go to the Synchronize page. And if we bring up our device, so there's our project that we just deployed, chemical inventory, find chemicals, sync data. If we just jump into sync data real quick, you'll see that's the form that we just worked on. If I jump over to chemical inventory, I can select a building, I'll select a room, and then I can just scan a bunch of, RFID tags. One thing to note, this app was probably designed for a Zebra device, so one other thing I need to do is just come over to the Project tab, go to Advanced, go to our reader parameters here, select my Janum XR2, and just enable that. Once that's enabled, I can redeploy this to the device. A little quick tip, rather than clicking the build deploy and scanning a QR code each time, I can just press the F5 key on my keyboard. That's going to rebuild the project with the latest changes. Click OK. And if I jump back over to my device, I can simply go to the menu, download project. And since we already have that address and project info, I can just click download. So that update should have taken place. Let's go back into chemical inventory, select our building, select our room, scan a bunch of tags. You'll see we got 132. I can post these. So this post scans is just going to save it locally to the device. So if I exit this and go to view data under the chemical inventory, that's going to show you our list of scans here. Now, if I wanted to, I could delete all these if I made a mistake or delete an individual one. Otherwise, I'll just click back. And if we jump over to sync data, before I click that, let me just go back to connect so you can see the activity. And I'll click to database. Oh, so you'll notice right away it's going to fail because I have my Excel sheet open. So you want to make sure that's closed. And may have closed that in time. Let's check it out. Yep, so looks like I caught it in time. So here's our building, here's our room. There's the tags that we read. Here's the date we read them and who the user who actually did the read. 132 records total. Let me just close that. One other change we can make is, let's say I wanted to filter so that only tags that start with a certain value are read. So if I go to chemical inventory, I can add a new field. I'll call it tag underscore filter, and I'll put a default value. I have tags starting with this value here. So I can enter that and then a percent after it. So essentially what we're going to do is what we call a like filter, which essentially acts as a starts with if we add a percent after it. So we're saying we only want to read tags that start with this value. So in order to do that, I'm going to jump over to the form designer, click on my grid, and I'm going to jump over to the filters, add a filter. Since we want to do a comparison that starts with, we're going to choose like. The local field is going to be the tag filter we add, and the remote field will be the tag ID that we're scanning into. So that's it. I'll click F5 to update that and rebuild. Jump back over to our device, download our update. Now if we jump to chemical inventory, select our building, select our room. So you'll see that now I'm only reading tags that start with this 455652. So this is useful if you're in a tag dense environment. A lot of times people receive equipment or items that are RFID tagged that they're not even aware of. So this kind of prevents those stray reads of picking up tags you don't want to see. So once again, I can post that data, exit, come over to sync data, click the to database. It's going to send those 82 records. I open my Excel sheet. We go to the bottom, you'll see that those 82 records were appended to the existing data. That's due to that post type being append. So this demonstrates how quickly you could use one of our free sample apps to actually get started. You can tweak the sample app to how you see fit. Like I did, I added that tag filter as well as set up a sync to Excel. So once again, all that is free to try. The only thing you need to license is the client itself. Next thing I just want to show quickly is how to create something from scratch. So if I jump over back to the welcome page, I'm going to click new projects. Give the project a name. If we jump back over to the project tab, so we'll call it RFID read test. And we'll see session 1, it gets added as a generic session. So I'm just going to say scan tags as the session name. I can choose an icon that I want to associate to this session. Otherwise, you'll get a default sort of pencil type icon. If I select that, I do have a listing of icons I can grab from. I'll just select this RFID one. Then I can choose what I want to collect data for by defining our fields. We'll say, like we did in the other app, maybe we have we'll just call it location. We'll have our tag, and then we'll just have a date. Just a simple 3-field app to scan tag data. I can remove any other fields that I'm not using. So location, I'll make this a drop-down. And if I pick this down, you'll see that we also have options for checkboxes, signatures, doing calculations, capturing images, as well as radio buttons. Once I do select drop-down, you'll see drop-down options. So this data can be populated from the project itself, or you can sync this data from a database or an Excel sheet. That's useful if you have an ever-changing list of locations or employees or something like that that you want to maintain. You can get this data from a database rather than having a static list in the project. But for time purposes, I'm just going to enter a few rooms here. Tag, that's just going to be a scan of tags that can remain as text. Date, that's going to be a data type of date time. And once I select that, I can choose a format. So we can type in our own, or we can select from the predefined formats. If you just want a date, you can select a date. If you just want a time field, you can just select from the time dropdown. Or I can type in, for example, I can do YYY-MM-DD and then HHMMSS. And you'll see as I'm typing, you'll see a sample of what that's actually going to look like. So I'll just click done. I can make this read only. Next thing we want to do is just define how the app flows. So once I select a location, we have an after scan event triggered, meaning that could be a drop-down selection or a barcode scan or a keyed entry followed by an enter key press. So once I select the location, it's going to drop down to that tag field. And then for the tag itself, I want to keep scanning tags over and over, so I'm going to have it go to itself. All right, the next thing we want to do is jump over to the form designer. I'll just create a default form. I'll just select the background as white, create default. If I wanted to quickly, I can line these fields up by using our form alignment controls up top. And in order to mass read RFID tags, we add what we call a cached grid. So I'm going to add a grid from the left-hand side. Just drag it to size. I also want to see the control IDs on the form, so I can click this ID at the top toolbar. It's going to show the unique control IDs for each of these controls. So to define the grid, I select it and I click data options over here. The source is going to be scan tags. I'm going to add 3 fields to it. So we have our location, we have our tag, and we have our date. I'm just going to slide this out of the way a little bit. So location, since this is what we call a cache or queued grid, we want to bound this data from a control. So as we're reading tags, we want to take that data from a field and place it into this grid. And in order to do this, we need to set a binding direction of from. And then we need to set where we're getting that data from. So location field is control 5. We're going to do the same for tag, which is 7, and date is 9. So I'm just going to click done real quick because we missed one step. So we want to make sure this is set to cached mode true. And now we can set a beep when row added. So every time we read a new tag, it's going to emit a beep. I can also set a record count control of where we want this grid count to show. So let's say we'll set that to our record count control, which happens to be 3. And then I can set a rows per page. I like to set this to 250, so that way we don't have to click left and right paging buttons to view different pages of data. So now if we jump back into those grid options, we'll see a few extra options for the control binding. So we can choose to clear the control on a binding, whether it's a key column, if it's required, and what triggers it. So the location fields, we're going to just say that that's required in the binding. The tag ID, we're going to clear that on a read. It's going to be the key so that we don't add duplicates. So it should only add unique instances of each tag. That is also required, and that's also what's going to trigger that binding. And then date, I could just leave all those false because that just fills up by default. Lastly, we have our column width. Let's say I just want to see the tag ID in this grid. So I'm going to set both location and tag to 0. And we'll make our column width of the tag to, let's say, 350. And one other thing we can do is adjust the font size of this grid. Let's make it 20. And the only other change I want to do is the submit button, having that do what we call a grid post. So rather than doing a record submit, we want to do a grid post. So that is right here. And the only thing we need to do is specify the grid control ID that we're posting from, which happens to be 13. So that means once we click the submit button, it's going to save any data that's currently in this queued grid. And the only other thing we need to do is come to data capture. I'm going to disable NFC, make sure that RFID is enabled for your session. Choose your EPC tag format. We support hex or ASCII. I'm just going to keep this at hex. We can set our radio power. I'm going to set it to max by default. You can also add a drop down on the form to set that dynamically. Everything else here looks good. I'm just going to add a smart form rule. So what that's going to do is take an RFID read complete of the EPC bank. That's going to be our tag ID. We're going to automatically put that into the tag fields, and that's going to speed up the scan of the actual tags. All right, so I think we are good. I'm going to deploy this. Once again, I scan that QR code. That is recommended if you're scanning or deploying a different project from the one you're currently working on. That'll get the new project name. All right, so you'll see my new application here, RFID read test. Here's our scan tags app. I can select our room, and then let me just do one other thing here. Input type for this should be keyboard, this should be RFID. And we also forgot to set our JANM to enable true. So we'll just update this. Go ahead and download it. Select our location. And there we are reading a bunch of tags. Read 192, click submit. That'll post those locally to the device. And if I click done and view data, we'll see those 192 tags. So that's how quickly you can create something from scratch using our desktop tool and deploy it over to your mobile device. And that concludes the live demonstration portion. Hoping that you got a lot out of this and can see how you can use our TracerPlus tool in your situation or for your applications. So with that being said, I'm going to show the PowerPoint again. So now we'll move on to the questions part. And I do see we have some questions here. One is, do these sample apps work on Android and iOS? Yes, we do support both Android and iOS devices. For the RFID part, if you're not using a device with an integrated RFID reader, which is definitely going to be the case for iOS, you can use what we call an RFID sled. So Zebra makes and TSL makes some Bluetooth RFID sleds where you can Bluetooth to your device and then utilize that sled or that Bluetooth device to actually do the reading of RFID and sometimes even barcode. That's supported on both iOS and Android. Another good question here, can multiple filters be created to capture only certain tags in the room? So that was the example I did with that chemical tracking app where I only wanted to read tags that start with this. So yes, you could do that by adding additional fields to the field settings of the filters you want to use. And then in the actual grid settings for that filter page, you can add multiple filter fields and choose whether you want to do an and comparison with all filters or an or. So that is possible. Another question on whether this meeting or this webinar was recorded. Yes, it is, and it'll be posted to our YouTube channel probably in the coming days. Another question on if you do you support CSV file format instead of Excel? Yes, we do. So I can just show that quick. If I bring up Connect again, and I select, let's just say I add another process here. I'll select, it's actually gonna be text as the type. And then I can choose the folder where that exists. Let's say my desktop. And then you'll see that I have different things appearing here. I can see both TXT files as well as CSV. So yes, we do support both CSV, TXT, really any custom field or custom extension, you know, maybe a .bat or something like that. If your system requires a certain file extension or file format that needs to be uploaded to your backend system, you can typically sync to that using Connect and then import that file to your system. Another question on, can you add multiple filters on the same tag? And then he followed up with that, like in the demo, tag starts with 1234%, and the tag starts with 112233%. Yes, you could do that. And once again, that would be done in two separate fields. So you'd have a field for, let me do this in an example. I'll add 2 fields here. We'll call it tag 1 filter. Then we'll have tag 2 filter. Tag 1 filter, I can set a default as 1234%. Tag 2 I can set as 112233%. And then in my grid, I can go over to the filters. I can add a filter, which is like, and it's say like tag 1 filter is like tag. Then I can add a second filter with the same like, where tag 2 filter is like tag. So we have one where tag 2 filter is like tag and tag 1 filter is like tag. And in this case, we want to do an or. So that means that this filter is going to say if it starts with this or if it starts with that, the other field. So that's a way you could filter on multiple tag starting prefixes. Another question on, is there a way in which you can link another data like description, price, etc. to an RFID code while reading tags? So there are a few ways to go about this. One, you would just preload a list of tags that have that data associated to it. So in Excel sheet, maybe you have the EPC value with its associated description and price, etc., so that when you actually read that tag, we can then display its description and price, you know, on a summary type screen. So that is possible. And we're actually looking to implement something soon. I don't know if those are familiar with our Count Quick app that actually does, you know, barcode scanning of UPCs with description, quantities, pricing. It basically does a, you know, a cycle count as well as an inventory of, you know, retail type stores. We're going to be adding a new app for RFID scanning that does a similar function. So that is going to scan an RFID tag and basically take what its associated UPC is and create a count based off of that. Another question on here is, can you implement a locate function within an app? Example, I have an asset. Let me just see the whole question here. I have an asset list that I pulled from our database and I want to find an asset in that room. Yes, so you can do that where you essentially open a form. It has your list of assets. You can add functionality to search for a specific asset, to filter that grid down to the specific asset or asset you're looking for, and then either select that single asset and use the locate to find it, or we have an option, what we call sort of an Easter egg hunt mode, where you could look for any tag in that list. So you could walk around holding the trigger, and as soon as it finds something in that list, it can pop up the tag locator dialog, and you can start locating that tag. Once you find it, you can mark it as found. Then you'll see the remaining items to find, and then you can kind of repeat the process until you find all of the items. And I believe that chemical inventory app that I demoed, I believe that has that functionality. Another good question here on recommended specs for VM hosting or RFID tracer stuff. So if you're referring to a virtual machine hosting the Connect software, you don't need anything crazy. You know, just a 4-core, even 8-core CPU would be fine. You know, maybe 8 gig of RAM. You know, about maybe 500 megabytes of free hard drive space. Nothing crazy for that. Right, I'm going to put up our contact slide. So if you do have any questions after this webinar, feel free to email us at sales@tracerplus.com or give us a call. If you're working with an existing rep, feel free to give them a call. Another good resource to use if you're looking to create applications on your own is our open office hours. Those run every Tuesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, as well as every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. to 11 Eastern. Please also follow us on LinkedIn, as well as subscribe to our TracerPlus YouTube page. You'll see this video posted there sometime in the near future. Once again, I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar and taking time out of your busy days. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.